Circular economy transition, how the Victorian Government is supporting for success. My name is Louise Barrett and I'm the Senior Program Manager here at Ecologic, and it's my pleasure to host this discussion as part of Greener Infrastructure Week, an initiative by Ecologic held during National Recycling Week. Thank you all for joining us today as we explore the strategies and initiatives driving Victoria's transition to a circular economy. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we are meeting on today. So for me, that's the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us here today. Just a few housekeeping points before we commence. We'll be keeping everyone on mute during the presentations to maintain audio quality. Please use the Q&A chat button to submit your questions at any time during the session, and we'll address as many as possible towards in the Q&A portion of today. And finally, please note that today's session is being recorded and will be shared afterwards. So today's session. Transitioning to a circular economy requires more than just recycling. It's about creating a system that minimises waste, keeps resources in use for as long as possible, and promotes sustainable practices. Today, we're going to hear directly from key leaders who are driving this shift through policy innovation, data-driven strategies, and sustainable infrastructure initiatives. I am thrilled to introduce our three speakers, each representing a vital part of Victoria's circular economy efforts. Our first speaker today will be Angela Hoefnagels, the Director of Circular Economy Policy at Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Change. Angela is at the forefront of developing policies that are shaping Victoria's circular economy strategy. And Angela, very eager to hear from you a little bit later on. Next, we'll be hearing from Gwyneth Elsum, the Director of Industry and Infrastructure at Sustainability Victoria, an agency of the Victorian Government that provides real-world solutions that are bold and scalable to suit a complex and rapidly changing environment. And if that doesn't describe the transition to circular economy, don't know what does. And finally, we have Jorja Pindor, the Director of Sector Intelligence and Reporting at Recycling Victoria. Jorja and her team provide the data and insights that inform recycling strategies across the state, identifying key trends and challenges to ensure Victoria's recycling programs are efficient and effective. Welcome to all three of you. Now let's get started with our first speaker. Angela, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Louise. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'm just going to share a little presentation with you. What I'm going to talk about this morning is the kinds of things that and events and global events actually that led to Victoria taking a strong focus on our recycling sector in particular, but also the broader economic transition to a circular economy. The many programs that the Victorian Government has delivered over the last 4 or 5 years in our to drive the transition to a circular economy, and some next steps from here. And I'm really pleased that my colleagues Gwyneth and Jorja are also here to talk about the amazing work that Sustainability Victoria and Recycling Victoria are doing in this space. But just to get started, let me paint you a little bit of a picture about the journey that we're on in Victoria in our circular economy transition. Some of you might remember that it wasn't so very many years ago that our recycling sector was in quite a bit of trouble. This was prompted, and I guess there was a catalyst in some shifting global trade arrangements for waste. Previously, Australia had exported a lot of its waste overseas for processing, and countries like China and others changed their policies to make that not possible. That really highlighted some fragilities that we had in our recycling system, particularly in Victoria at that time. And it led to some insolvencies, unsafe waste management practices. We had quite a lot of problems with waste fires, with service disruptions. The sector was in quite a difficult space, and public trust in our recycling system was significantly undermined. So the Victorian Government stepped in to stabilise the sector, but took a long-term view to that stabilisation and decided to not just focus on fixing that sector, but to think about the role that waste plays in our society, and not just waste, but how do we make really efficient use of resources. So that started us on our long-term journey to transition Victoria to a more circular economy, from linear to circular. And I'm going to talk a little bit about many of the programs that we've delivered over the last 4 or 5 years to start that journey. But really, this is a long-term transition in a similar way to our renewable energy transition and our net zero transition, are long-term propositions that require whole of economy support and action. So is the circular economy journey, which is closely aligned to those other transitions. Victoria's circular economy policy is focused on a few really key goals, and that includes changing the way that we in Victoria make goods and infrastructure and products and deliver services. It affects everything. When we're talking about a circular economy transition, we're talking about everything from roads and buildings to teddy bears and chocolate milkshakes. Everything in the economy is made from resources, and we can make better use of those resources to meet the needs of people. That's really the fundamental goal. But it's not just about how we make them, it's also how we use them. When we're designing products, are we making them to be durable, reusable, repairable, and recyclable at end of life? And then are we actually maintaining those products? Are we reusing them? Are we circulating them? And then are we putting in place systems to really carefully capture those materials at the end of their useful life and turn them into new products so that we can keep them circulating at their highest value use? And while we're doing that, are we reducing the harm from pollution and waste on human health and the environment? Those are the things that we've been focusing on and will continue to be a focus for Victoria. Let me just talk a little bit about where we've focused our efforts over the last 4 years, and dollars don't necessarily mean effort, but they're a reasonable proxy. So I've put on the screen there not only the types of programs that we've been delivering, but also where government's put its dollars to drive those changes. And you can see that in the first tranche of Victoria's circular economy policy, we've had a very strong focus on driving change in our recycling system, because that was where we had some really critical systems to repair and reform and to build greater resilience. Importantly, you'll see in that dark green side on the left, a lot of work that's been done in Victorian Government to stabilise the recycling sector, to increase safety. There's been some amazing work amongst regulators to really lift the standards, the safety standards in the recycling sector, to reduce the number of high-risk sites that we have in the state, and to better manage problem and hazardous wastes. But and Gwyneth will talk a bit more about this, we've done some amazing work to support businesses who are at the leading edge of the circular economy transition with using resources more productively, and supporting, importantly, supporting the use of recycled content in new products made locally in Victoria. And I know Gwyneth's going to talk a lot more about that. In Greener Infrastructure Week, in an event hosted by Ecologic, it's really important to note the importance of the Recycled First policy and the work that Ecologic does in that mix. Let me just talk a little bit more about the kinds of programs that are specifically targeted at that recycling end market space, that the space where we're trying to ensure that we're capturing up lots of really high value waste materials and use them in high value products and infrastructure in the Victorian economy. This slide is just a little bit of a taster of some of the most substantial things that Victorian Government's been doing in recent years to drive that change. On the top right there, you've got our household recycling reform, which many of you will, if you're located in Victoria, will be familiar with. About 2/3 of households in Victoria now have access to a food and organics, a garden organics recycling bin that is separated out from residual waste. And I think it's now about 1/3 of households have the fourth bin, which is the glass recycling bin, which is designed to get glass and particularly paper separated out, because we found that many of our commingled recyclables were losing their value and being less able to be used in high value new products when they were breaking and getting mixed up and together. So by separating out the glass from the other recyclables, we're creating higher value streams of materials that are leading to bottle-to-bottle recycling, which is the goal. The other example of that kind of separation intervention is the Vic CDS, our container deposit scheme, which just recently celebrated its first birthday. And coincidentally, we achieved 1 billion containers returned through the container deposit scheme in that first year, which just demonstrates how many Victorians have embraced that reform, which means that everybody can get their 10 cents for taking their beverage containers back. I particularly love this this image on the left of your screen, which is a partnership between Vic CDS and Scouts. And as a parent of kids who went through the Scouting movement, I'm really delighted to see this badge that you can get for your camp blanket if you return containers through the scheme. It's a really great way to support recycling in our households and communities. But there's been heaps of work across the entire portfolio. As I said, Gwyneth will talk more about the Buy Recycle Directory and some of the great work that Sustainability Victoria has been doing to support businesses with innovation. It would be remiss of me not to speak about the work that Ecologic's done to drive more recycled content into Victoria's Big Build. And I apologise actually because that slide is a bit out of date. I gave this only a few weeks ago, but it is not 3.5 million tonnes that's been committed in and delivered as part of Victoria's Big Build, but 4.9 million tonnes of materials that have been collected as waste in Victoria that are now forming part of transport infrastructure in Victoria. And that's a result of the amazing work done by not just Ecologic, but the industry partners that have innovated and found new ways to use recycled content, that have worked with the transport network engineers and found ways to safely integrate recycled content where previously only virgin and raw materials were used. That kind of work takes a high degree of collaboration and innovative thinking and perseverance to make it work. And it's a real testament to all of the folks who've worked in that space that there's such a great outcome. I might also just talk a bit about, I've talked a lot about what the Victorian Government can do to drive and has done and is doing to drive the circular economy transition in Victoria. It's important to reflect that this is a transition that we're all a part of, not just government, but that businesses and households and academia all have a role in working together to drive this change. Particularly when we're talking about how do we get more waste into recycling and into new products, there's lots of things that we can all do. An important one is what we've been doing with the Recycle First policy, which is buying recycled. When we think about purchasing a new asset or a new good or new infrastructure, thinking about the extent to which we can use recycled materials in place of virgin and raw materials is an important thing. It's true in our daily life too. When you're in the supermarket aisle and you're looking at products, thinking about how you can buy products that contain recycled material is really important. In the broader sense of thinking about circularity, thinking about how we can design, how businesses can design their goods and their services with the end in mind. Are you designing your products and your infrastructure to be durable and repairable, and at the end of its useful life to be recyclable? The circular transition is a collaborative, it's a team sport. It's not one where we're going to win on individual achievement. It is really, there is the long-term whole of economy reform requires businesses and governments and researchers and households to work together. And so I encourage particularly businesses and researchers to work together on shared problems and to identify new and innovative ways to create greater circularity of materials in the economy and really improve our resource productivity. And thinking about how we can separate out our waste and make sure that we're returning recyclable materials in a way that they can be recycled is really important too. I do want to talk just really briefly about, because I'm talking mostly about what the Victorian Government is doing in this space, I want to talk just very briefly about the agencies that are primarily responsible for this space, in addition to Ecologic in the Victorian Infrastructure Development Authority, which is so capably leading the Recycled First policy. We've got Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action. I'm in the Climate Action and Circular Economy part of the department, and I look after policy and strategy. But we also have in the department Recycling Victoria, which is our new regulator responsible for oversight of the recycling industry and helping to support that resilience and long-term safety and viability and thriving of our recycling sector in Victoria. Sustainability Victoria is our public-facing industry and community support agency that's really driving behaviour change and business change on the ground, and they do a fantastic job that Gwyneth's going to talk about shortly. And the EPA, of course, is responsible for overseeing the environmental safety in Victoria and preventing harm to human health and the environment in Victoria from pollution and waste, and enforcing the general environmental duty that we all share to protect Victoria's natural environment. Finally, I just wanted to put this in a little bit of context too. So I've been talking a lot about Victoria and what we're doing, but Victoria is not on this circular economy journey alone. Globally, there are more than 70 countries that have national circular economy strategies, and we're seeing increasing sophistication in global research and analysis on the importance of the circular economy transition to environmental outcomes, in particular about the links of growing resource use with climate change, with biodiversity loss, and with air pollution globally. And so it's increasingly a focus for many governments around the world, and certainly in Australia and in the states and territories here. So at the national level, we've seen the Australian government appoint a circular economy ministerial advisory council that's been advising the Australian government. Their final report is due to come out soon, and we're all waiting to see that eagerly, because it'll be part of advising the Australian government on their long-term circular economy strategy, which we're also expecting to see in the coming months. And at the local level too, we know local governments are very deeply involved in the transition to a circular economy and very committed to it. Gwyneth will talk a little bit about the work that Sustainability Victoria has been doing to support local governments in that role. But we also know that local governments are at the coalface of ensuring that we're collecting up household waste in particular and sending it off for productive reuse. And we know that they're thinking about how to go on that journey to a circular economy. We recently saw the first major agreement from a group of local governments to send some of their residual waste that cannot be recycled, to a waste to energy facility from the southeast of Melbourne. So councils are really working through these waste and circular economy transition questions along with the state and national governments. I think the thing that I would leave you with is that this is a journey that we're all on together, and Victoria is a really great place to invest in the circular economy and to collaborate on this major economic transition together. I'll hand back to Louise now so that we can move on to the other speakers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Angela, and thank you for sharing those policy insights. And a big congratulations on the container deposit scheme, and 1 billion containers is a fantastic outcome. And I guess some of the takeaways for me there is just there's so many interconnected points, and real underpinned by the need to have strong collaboration. And with that, we'll move on to Gwyneth from Sustainability Victoria. Welcome, Gwyneth, and please start sharing your screen, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks very much, Louise. Oh, here we are. I'm going to just share my screen. you. All right. Thank you, Angela. Yes, just make sure this is in the right format so that everyone can see. Excellent. So thank you, Angela. Yes, as Angela and Louise have already said, Sustainability Victoria is part of, I guess, a partnership right across Victorian Government in terms of driving the transition to the circular economy. Sustainability Victoria is a statutory agency of the government established 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. It has its own act and it has a 20-year history of providing programs to the Victorian community and businesses. Our current focus is on the circular economy and the transition to the circular economy. And the reason we're focused on that is while we recognise that 55% of our emissions are generated from our energy use, we believe that that transition is well underway. For the 45% of emissions that come from our material use, there is, I guess, less activity in terms of that transition, and we're here to help broker that transition for Victoria. Now, today, Sustainability Victoria runs quite a number of broad programs, those of you who are familiar with the organisation. Today, I'm going to talk about 2 and then to touch on 3 more that might be of interest to you. And if so, you can obviously get in contact with us either via email or through our website for these additional programs. So the first program that I want to talk to you about today is one that Angela's already mentioned. This was part of the policy package that Angela mentioned, a market acceleration package. It was designed to support the development of new and innovative products, improve market confidence in recycled products and materials, and reduce unnecessary regulatory barriers for the use of recycled materials and provide regulatory certainty to support that innovation. It's been a collaborative effort across the department, the EPA and Sustainability Victoria. Sustainability Victoria's focus has been the first 2 of these dot points, supporting the development of products and improving market confidence in those products and materials. So this is a little bit about how we have, I guess, approached this or tackled this topic. The journey shows there's two kind of key elements that we've tackled here. We've been trying to push, I guess, recycled material, feedstock into products, but we've also been working on the other side, which is the pull side, to make sure that there's opportunities or markets for those products to go to. So this map shows a bit of a journey of our program and how our partnership process works. For us, the initial interest was all about the R&D, the research and development, and was all about innovation on the back of researchers and industry collaboration. It was all about what was possible. And as the program matured and recycled products and materials have become a little bit more common in the economy, so too has the expectations and requirements on those materials. So we saw an increase focused on the performance benefits. So things like the product longevity, the performance and reduced maintenance of some of these products made from recycled content. And in addition to technical specs, the program has also had a greater regard for the environmental performance or claims at any across the point of life of these products. Something we've also realised through working through this is that often knowledge and influencing of buyers is key. You can't request or preference materials that you don't know exist. And so through our procurement work that I'll talk about too a little bit later, we've focused on, raising awareness and with procurers to know what is available for them. So from SV, Sustainability Victoria's point of view, the program has invested more than $20 million in trials, research and development, and commercialisation support. So I'll just give you a bit of a sample of the type of projects that we have been supporting here. So, for instance, we've had Swinburne GT Recycling and Robofood pioneering a 3D module lightweight recycled plastic void formers. These are made from 100% recycled plastic There's a weight savings of up to 75%, sorry, and we've seen thermal properties improve. Another example, and there's a video there if you wish to have a look, is Victoria University Greater Western Water and Ground Science trialling backfill of trenches with recycled material. In this example is a good one where we have supported the R&D in its first phase and are now looking to support, I guess, in situ trials of this product with the backing of that industry partner in Greater Western Water. Another example of the type of project, Yarra Valley Council and Porous Lane have been using permeable pavements with recycled rubber. This is a project if you know anything about Yarra City Council, they have limited space for traditional water-sensitive urban design and recognise the need for solutions that improved urban tree health, as well as reducing the heat island effect in their council area. Also, as part of this program, we've had a focus on organics. So over the last 2 years, we've invested more than $13 million into building a more resilient and innovative organics network. We've looked to improve the existing recycled organic products. We've looked to do infrastructure investment that builds overall capacity and also improve the quality of organics materials coming through the system. So since, as I said, since 2021, we've awarded more than $10 million to 13 organic infrastructure projects and leveraged an additional $28.6 million in private investment, as well as another $7 million from the federal government. And all 13 projects will increase the capacity to reproduce food organics and garden organics waste by over 500,000 tonnes per annum and improve the quality of almost 400 tonnes per annum to a higher order use. It's also created about 100 full-time jobs. So this infrastructure investment will enable Victoria to recycle the increased supply of food and garden waste collected in curbside bins, which Angela just mentioned as one of those programs, the FOGO bins, and redirect that waste from landfill into valuable products. I guess this is a bit of an example of some of the types of projects we've funded. Shared farm machinery. So individual farms, it's not always cost effective to invest in the equipment that they need. And so we've had some projects where we've had facilitated the purchase of equipment that is shared between farms, done supported on-farm trials of use of the organics. Composting infrastructure, we've also supported and invested in. Community projects that look at community composting, as well as product improvement and market research. Just also wanted to highlight that as part of this program, we have an active research program that includes a horizon scan, and then this helps us assess the current market conditions for priority materials and any emerging materials. As a result of this program, we have had throughout the history of doing these material flow analysis, we have resulted in policy decisions, things like e-waste, landfill bans, national strategies for end of life for tyres, and listing of PVs under the Minister's priority list. This here is just a bit of a list of one of our latest list of emerging materials that we believe we need to consider into the future. And obviously lithium-ion batteries is very topical at the moment as well, if you're involved in the recycling sector at all. So that's really that's what we've been focused in terms of driving that market acceleration. Next, I wanted to just turn our focus to the pull side of what I've just mentioned previously. Angela mentioned the Recycle First policy. Ecologic is a key component of that, supporting the recycled content into the big build. At Sustainability Victoria, we've been focused on working with local councils. Local councils also spend a substantial amount of money in infrastructure. And so we've been working with supporting local councils and alpine resort management boards to increase their procurement of recycled products and infrastructure in landscaping projects as well. With the local government as a major player in the procurement space, the building capability and appetite for sustainable procurement helps secure those vital end markets for our recycled products and increase the investment for local suppliers and contributes to Victoria's transition to the circular economy. There are three key things we focus on for this biorecycled surface: knowledge sharing and networking, improving procurement documentation and processes, and building confidence in the recycled products. This is the suite of things we do under this program. I'll let you read those for yourselves. You are able to access some of this material on our website, so that the website is there below. And you absolutely feel free to contact the team. I'm just now going to focus on three components of this program in a little bit more detail. The first one is our biorecycled champions. So the Biorecycled Champion program is an initiative that helps empower champions to embed sustainable procurement practices in their business as usual at their councils. It provides participants with opportunities to build capability, influence, network and share successes with their own councils and beyond. Up to date, we've had 23 champions over 20 councils. They've been procurement officers, engineering, sustainability officers, architecture and design, and waste officers as well. We hold events to upskill and connect councils to share. We've also provided councils with the opportunity to work with Procurement Australia to update their procurement documentation, including data collection methods, policy, evaluation criteria, and response schedules. We've just relaunched the Champions Network with a bit of a rebranding to be bi-circular, and we now have 44 champs across 30 councils. Another key component of this program has been the showcase events. So we've run a few of these now. We generally have over 100 people at each event. With each event, we'll have a panel discussion with local government project managers who use recycled materials. We have a supplier showcase where we can councils can speak directly with suppliers and ask them questions about their products and touch and feel them and see them in real life, not just online. And we also have site visits. With both events, or all our events, we've had civil works and organic site visits available to those who attend. One of the key things we've learned over the last few years with this program, it is really important for people to be able to go and see the success stories. And these site visits and these showcase events have led to other councils seeing what the first mover has done, and other councils then seeing that success and building requests into their procurement as a result. Finally, we have what we call our biorecycled directory. This is a directory that initially was set up and geared towards councils, but is available on a website for anyone to use. It was launched in 2020 to provide councils with a comprehensive list of recycled products, mainly ones in Victoria that could be used in infrastructure projects. We have updated it since 2020 based on feedback. It is actually the most popular online resource in our biorecycled service, and last year we had more than 4,000 users and over 17,000 page views. At the moment, we have over 100 suppliers and 350 products listed, which is continuing to grow with new suppliers and products registering, and we're looking to expand this tool in the near future as well, so watch this space. I just want to touch briefly on, as I said, I've talked about two of our key programs, our Market Acceleration Program and our Procurement Program with councils. I just want to touch on three other things that might be of interest to you that Sustainability Victoria does, which is by no means also everything we do. So the CBIC, which is the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre, and it's a hub for circular business model innovation and was established again in 2020. With this program, we support capability building, collaboration and uptake of circular business models and practices in Victoria. As Angela said, it's going to be a team effort, and this network provides opportunities for people to share who have tried to create circular businesses, to share their experiences and meet new people. It's one of the few programs under the current policy from Victoria that focus on higher order in terms of changing the business models, focusing on things like preventing waste in the first place, extending product lifespans, enhancing recycle rates further up the supply chain. Again, if you're interested in this program, please go to our website. That we have a newsletter, or you can also come along to an event. I've always had very good feedback about the events through the CVIC program. I also wanted to mention our investment facilitation service. So this is a personalised free service that we offer. And initially, we've set this up primarily to focus on supporting investment in circular and recycling infrastructure in Victoria. However, we're looking to, again, broaden the scope of who we support for this, as we find through our market acceleration and our CVIC programs that this is applicable not just to infrastructure, but to all businesses who are trying to establish themselves under a circular economy model. So this service we offer, can help you navigate government policy direction and its priorities, provide data, information and insights on the waste and resource streams, identify potential financial and non-financial support that you can be given, provide advice to businesses of the business case development for your idea, identify suitable sites for your projects and help you navigate the approval processes, inform you of the environmental requirements you might need or potential risks, connect you with industry, government, regulators and the community, and provide insights on the status and development of local end markets that you might need for your product or service. We also can connect with research institutions and potential partners. And we have organisations and businesses of all scales, small and very large, coming through this service. So again, if you're interested, please make contact with the team. I just want to finish finally on a bit of I guess a call to arms in an area that sustainability also works and supports this transition to a circular economy. And that's a bit of a plug for education and behaviour change. Like Angela said, when you're at the supermarket in your day job, thinking about how you can build recycled content into what you purchase is important. Likewise, at the very front end, it's really important that you put the right objects in the right bin at home, because it supports all of what I've just talked about in the presentation so far. If we have good quality, fit for purpose recovered material, then we can achieve high quality, consistent and consistent products at the other end. So SV runs education and behaviour change programs on behalf of the Victorian Government and supports local councils as well. We do that to help minimise and reduce waste in the first place, to help Victorians recycle more and better, and improve recycling by reducing contamination in that recycled material. And in part, that is by helping residents correctly use their new and ever-changing recycling service. So we've got two focuses of this program. It's what we call our Small Acts Big Impact program. The two key streams are the curbside reforms, which Angela talked about. Those are the four bins, and supporting councils and supporting residents to use them correctly. And the other is around waste avoidance and minimisation in the first place. As I said before, we need to build trust in the recycling system, raise awareness of upcoming changes and build the social norms that allow that positive waste avoidance behaviours and promote behaviour change in the first place. And that's all, Louisa. I'll hand back to you so that you can introduce Jorja.
Yeah, thanks, Gwyneth, for sharing the important work that SV has been doing. And yeah, it's really inspiring to see how the collaboration across kind of industry is really getting some great outcomes. So thank you for sharing that. And actually a bit of insight, the Robo Void has been successfully used in one of our level crossing removal projects. I think it's just a really good kind of connection piece there between R&D here and getting it in the ground over, you know, in project delivery land. So thank you. Okie dokie. Jorja, looking forward for you to share your insights and data and analytics to do with the recycling industry. Take it away. Are you just on mute, Jorja, just so you're aware? Yep. We can see your presentation, but you're on mute at the moment. There we go.
Thank you, Friday morning syndrome. Thank you so much, Louise. So taking a bit of a different tact at the moment, I'm the Director of Sector Intelligence and Reporting at Recycling Victoria, and my team is focused on getting information from the sector and from local government and from other sources, including what waste is exported, what data points from ABS, and combining it all so that we can have a really good understanding of what's happening and report annually for a number of reasons. One of the products that we create from that information that we get annually is the Circular Economy and Market Report. It's a new requirement that the first one went out March this year. So I thought I'd take you through what that looks like and what's coming up for the next one. But just, I guess, one of the good products of why really good data is important and how it's being utilised. Just can't see if the screen's changed, sorry.
So we're still on your first slide. Yep, it's now moved. Yep.
Great. So as I mentioned, this report is a new requirement under the Act, which was created, as Angela mentioned, with a large step change in Victoria, seeing some significant issues in the recycling sector. So Recycling Victoria was created out of that. And one of the many things that we do is this annual market report. The intent of this report is to look at how we're travelling with each of our material streams that are the key streams in our state, and to understand any transition we're making in any of those streams towards a more circular economy. So I'm sure that you're all aware, but just looking at using less, using for longer, making clean so that we can reuse and to use again as much as we can. So that's the ultimate target, and part of this report is to find better ways to understand that transition and measurement. The first report, one of the focuses was showing the different portions of the sector that make up the large majority of waste generated in Victoria. So really understanding at a macro, then a deeper level is part of what my team does. So looking at it from the material streams and where they're going, and then we do a bit of a deeper dive into where the waste comes from, and more specifically, like for instance for plastics, what type of plastics they are and how they're individually tracking. And this helps us understand how we're progressing towards our targets for landfill diversion, and also where we can, where the opportunities are in terms of good and bad performers. So when we look at our overall materials, looking at it from a snapshot view, we can see that we have some very high performers in terms of recovery rates, and some ones that aren't doing so well. Understanding that recovery rates aren't the only thing that we need to focus on moving forward in understanding circularity. For this report, it was the best measure we could get to see, I guess, the pulse check on how each of these parts of our sector is performing. As I mentioned, we then sort of look under the hood for this information to understand from the source. So on the left-hand side, we've got the source of households or MSW, commercial, industrial and construction demolition. So understanding their generation, the generated waste, the recovered, disposed and their recovery rates. So we can really understand which portion of our, or which source is performing, and seeing where the opportunities can be within those sources. Looking at the change from the previous year is also important to really understand, just tracking if we're steady, which the construction and demolition sector has been steady for a very long time, whereas the household, the MSW and the C&I have been ones that have been more fluctuated more, particularly around the COVID period. Just taking a deeper view into the construction and demolition sector, this data is representing the total amount of waste generated by that sector, its overall recovery rate, and disposal to landfill. So even though it's a very high recovering rate, in fact the best of our material streams, what is still going to landfill is over 1 megatonne of waste. So there's a great opportunity there. So I guess looking at it from a few different angles, if you're looking specifically at the percentage, or you're looking at how much goes to landfill, where those opportunities lie. So as I mentioned earlier, we can look deeper underneath the material streams, not just how much, but break it down into different components by the stream. So this is a construction and demolition snapshot, which shows the different material streams we look at, their recovery rates of those particular components in tonnes and disposed to landfill. So what we can really unpack from here is what are the opportunities, and we can add layers to this, such as economic loss. So a lot of these material streams have an economic value, a commodity rate, and if they could be recovered, what that could be. So we could look at that commodity rate times disposed to landfill tonnes or recovered tonnes to understand the market size, or to the opportunity loss. So they're the type of things that we can use with this level of data. So this is an annual report. We use this type of data to really understand the sector in terms of its components. But what we also do is have good news stories. So we show case studies of circularity in action. So I'm really interested, and feel free to contact me if there's any good news stories you'd like to promote in these reports. We also do deep dives into issues or into sectors that have been identified that are potentially have a lot of opportunities or seem to have a lot of change, so that we can have a more deeper insights as a targeted approach of what's happening. And because this is an annual report, we can keep it fresh and use that data to inform each year's new focus areas. So from the first report, we identified that we need better ways to measure the key material streams in terms of their transition to a more circular economy. So that's anticipated for the next report, which will be due out in around March next year. So we're understanding that recovery rates alone don't give us the full picture, particularly around reuse, repair, and the ability for that material to be recycled. We're also looking at new case studies, as I mentioned. So case studies the good news stories of what's happening, particularly in the areas that we see need opportunities to improve on. So the next report will be focusing on food waste, and particularly opportunities in hospitality. We'll be looking at market changes. So we look on year any change, but also looking at a bit of a 3 or 4 year view to see if there's any trends. And some deep dives, as I mentioned, is some problematic or emerging issues, which it will be focused around those materials identified in the first report, which was mostly around the energy transition materials and what the opportunities are with those, and in the textile sector, which with some opportunities, particularly in the clothing sector. So that's all I've got for today, but just wanted to show what type of data we're getting and how it's used, and keen for any interest into going to our website to have a look at either the data in action, which is interactive, or in the report itself, which is on the Recycling Victoria website. Thank you, and over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Jorja. Okay, we now have a portion of questions and answers. So if all our speakers can turn on their camera. And also audience members, please pop your questions that you have into the Q&A chat, but I might kick things off here. And I think I'm going to base it around maybe behaviour. And Gwyneth, I'll invite you to perhaps answer, but obviously Angela and Jorja jump in as well. So Gwyneth, I wanted just to get your opinion on how important behaviour change is as part of this transition to a circular economy, and your perspectives on, obviously you spoke about it a bit in your presentation, but really wanting to pull out and highlight, behaviour change and any insights or reflections you might have on how much that plays a critical role in the transition to a circular economy.
Thanks, Louise. Yes, I guess from where I sit, it's clearly a system that is in play and a system that is at work, and it needs change all through that system. And we as humans are participating in various ways at every point of that system. And that's why, as humans, we need that behaviour change education. If we're going to change the whole system, we need to change the way we behave and operate in that system. So I pointed to, in the example right at the start, where we do have materials that can be recycled or recovered, it's important right from the start to be putting it in and separating them and putting them in our bins at our businesses and the like, because that starts a chain reaction right through in terms of being able to easily and effectively and cost effectively recover that, to be able to have fit for purpose materials that is useful. And I guess contamination is always a big topic in terms of those recovered materials, and that's as a result of the wrong thing going to the wrong bin. But right through to at the other end around actually purchasing these products. And you have to have the knowledge that these things exist, and we have to have the support for people and organisations and businesses to build it into what is currently a linear system, and the knowledge. So it's sort of, for me, it's one of those underpinning things that touch points all the way through in terms of that transition, and it doesn't just stop. It's not a one-off. Okay, so it's, both our recycling system might be changing, but also our products are changing, and even if you think about things like embedded batteries in everything from teddy bears, as Angela mentioned, when I was growing up, you didn't have embedded batteries in teddy bears. It's now something that is an issue because they're embedded in a product. We need to be able to extract them somehow, and recover those resources as well. So our products and services change, and therefore behaviour and education is an ongoing need, so we know what to do with them across the entire life of that product or service.
Yeah, fabulous. Angela and Jorja, anything to add there? If not, I was just going to provide some of my observations. So at the beginning of Greener Infrastructure Week, we had Rebecca Gilling from Planet Arc join us, and again echoed really same sentiments there around education being really key, having the right tools in place to help people make the right decisions around how they're recycling and making sure we don't get that contamination in our waste, and the incentive that understanding where your waste goes to, or I should say resource, that was a correction we made on Monday, but the resource and what it ends up being, and that being a real key driver for you at the bin to make the right choice, and or being more, not the right choice, but sometimes just knowing where to put it and being confidently selecting the right bin.
And I think possibly what we don't always do is share the success or the good news stories about these. As someone who has not necessarily been in the sector as long as some of our colleagues on the call, I didn't know that if you if you do buy a drink in a clear plastic bottle, it only takes 30 to 35 days in Victoria for that to turn around from your recycling bin to be back on the shelf with another bottle of drink in it. We don't necessarily share where we are having these success stories, and that when good behaviours end up in good results.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's a fascinating little stat. I'm gonna keep that one. Thank you. Okay, I was going to check the Q&A chat here. I might ask the next question for Angela here. What challenges have you encountered in implementing circular economy policies? And, you know, how, as far as reasonably practical, have some of those obstacles been addressed?
It's a really good question, and there are some real challenges for governments and businesses and communities to work on together in this transition. We've talked about one of them that has lots of implications. We've talked about the importance of separating waste and making sure it's clean, so that we can put it to good use. One of the things that we're kind of grappling with is sometimes the products that we're trying to recycle have components that are not suitable for recycling in them. And so, for example, you know, there's a lot of IT equipment has flame retardants in the plastic, and that means that the plastic's not really suitable for recycling. Sometimes we have contaminants, other kinds of contaminants like asbestos or PFAS in waste streams that make them less suitable for use in new settings where we want to avoid harms to human health and the environment. So we've been working through that in our Recycle Markets acceleration program in this collaboration with the EPA, and they've been thinking really deeply about how we can support businesses to safely reuse all of our waste streams where they can, and where we need to set really clear standards about contaminants. And then there's kind of a larger national conversation about that's only in its early stages, I think, about how do we manage the components and constituents that are going into products when they're being manufactured in the first place, and do we need to sort of turn the tap off at the start? That's a long-term conversation that we need to work through.
Thank you, Angela. Good response there. And Jorja, in the last few minutes, I might squeeze in a question for you. And out of pure curiosity for me, you had in your presentation, you spoke about you know, materials with low circularity. Would you, off the top of your head, be able to kind of talk about you know, examples of those particular materials, the ones that we're finding have low circularity?
Yep. So thanks, Louise. I think, and something to note too, that we are looking at better ways to measure that metric. So on a I guess a higher level, we're looking at recovery rates at the moment. So textiles and plastics are our two lower performers, if you like, and there's a lot of reason for they're very complex material streams. So that includes, so textiles, for instance, if I focus on that, we have a clothing sector which is doing a lot of really good things and a lot of innovation, but the large majority of the tonnages is carpet and upholstery. And so you've got, it's a complex type of material in terms of, it can also have synthetic or plastics integrated into it. So textiles isn't textiles, if you like, but there's a lot of really good work being done, and I'm really optimistic with that particular material stream, particularly in the clothing and apparel area. But the more you look, the more complex it is and the more different components there are. So there's not one solution to fix a material stream, if you like. And plastics is the same. There's a number of different polymers that are better than others in terms of ability to be recycled. As Angela had pointed out, there's a lot of products that have more than one. They're complex. Some parts are good, some parts are bad. And it is cost prohibitive a lot of the time just to pull out that good bit and get rid of the bad bit, if you like. And that's something that we're seeing, particularly around items. Embedded batteries is one of our problem children, where there's the battery in there that has a potential to be recovered, but if it's got 80% of plastics wrapped around it from a toy, getting it out and the cost of doing that can be cost prohibitive. So they're probably the two streams, but there's different answers for each of the polymers of plastic as well as with textiles. So I'm really optimistic that there's innovation, particularly with the work that Gwyneth and Angela have been doing. But the data that we get can kind of look at tracking the benefits of some of those new initiatives. So yeah, I'm optimistic with those current low performers.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jorja, and thanks for your optimism. And I think, yeah, product design. I think we have a whole nother session coming on that maybe next year for conference. But thank you for that answer, and yeah, some of the usual suspects spoken about there as well. Okay, all right. We're at 11. So as we wrap up today's session and very nearly Greening Infrastructure Week, I want to say a big thank you to our speakers. Thank you for your valuable insights and for joining us today. And thank you for talking about the great work that you're doing in making Victoria a leader in our circular economy transition. Today's discussion for me kind of highlighted that the journey requires collaboration, data-driven insights, and policy innovation and engagement with industry for us all to move towards a sustainable and resilient future. So to our audience members, there's one more session, a part of Greener Infrastructure Week, and that's our launch of the Suppliers Guide. So please join us for that later today. But for everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks for participating in the conversation. And yeah, thank you. Leave it there. And once again, thanks to our speakers. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Bye-bye.